Can I steal one of these? Or?
That's for you.
Oh, cool, great. Well, I don't get up there enough. My
That's what she told me.
daughter and her boyfriend are. Get up there. Wow.
Did they go?
Oh, yeah.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah, I've got a.
Oh, he wouldn't.
They
take
come
that.
visit us and say hi and then they take off their mask.
Okay, so we might as well get going.
Recording in progress.
Okay, has everyone had a chance to look over the minutes and did anyone have any changes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Okay, I will second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Do we have any public comment? Very quiet, I will assume that. So are we going right to the housing committee update? Don't have anything in here for that, or is that just?
It's, yeah, just really brief, basically. There's still a 35% design meeting for Raptor Lane is actually next Friday, the 26th. Which has, I guess, color on what the units, when they go and what's, hurdles might be with the permitting process. But also, August meeting has a much robust kind of explanation. Here's where we are. 35% design.
Okay.
So we're not gonna have the complete report until September.
All right, so let's move to the short-term rental, and the price proposal. I'm sure everyone's had a chance to look at.
Yep, so, under self-directed technologies, they offer kind of a host of things related to managing, registering, enforcing short-term rental regulations. So they kind of the short of it is that they offer a rental inventory software, an outreach campaign. They can do the registration portal, which actually take in registration fees. They even offer kind of like a call center type service where they will kind of take and document complaints and then forward them to you. It runs the gamut in terms of cost. It's not super large. But after seeing the presentation of the rental inventory software, it's pretty impressive. It continually updates itself. There's no.
So if somebody comes on during the year.
Yeah,
You don't need to manually go in.
correct. Yeah, there's no like annual update or anything like that. It's actually live software that updates like every day.
That's pretty
So every
impressive.
time there's a new listing or something different, it will.
Which that's
It'll
so good to
potentially
be able to reach
capture
straight
that.
out to
Yeah.
people that.
Probably the most interesting takeaway from a statistical piece was that they're saying when you look online, and for instance, we had some discussions with folks saying, hey, there's only 30 or 40 of these things, that I find online. According to Deckard, what you see online is only about 60% of what exists.
Wow.
And they have numbers to kind of prove that out. So they're in their proposal, you could see that there was an estimate that it could be like 95 to 20 of the units in Dorset, just based on what's typically available when their software does what it does. You can even integrate facets of your regulations into their software. So for instance, we have a cap on people, but certain amount of bedrooms equals a certain amount of people, and then you get a couple more. So they'll actually be able to calculate, per unit, how many they're supposed to have in the house. And if they're listing for more than that, it'll actually, when you go and you click on that listing, it'll like bring it up a red flag. And then obviously it's up to the town to enforce. but stuff like that is kind of interesting and neat. So we don't have a lot of complaints like we've talked about, but that's, the overcapacity of houses is one of the complaints that typically comes up. It's a busy weekend, we've got, 25 people in a 3-bedroom house. That's just, most real sensible people say that's much, and there's a lot of stuff that kind of comes along with that. So that's the type of thing that, it allows for some active enforcement without really much, effort, so to speak. It'll flag that stuff and send an email, so you'll get active feedback, which I thought was pretty impressive. I mean, it's really geared for, really, really large communities that have many, many, many thousands of these things, but it still works all the way down to a small scale too. So the two things that I'm thinking it makes sense for us to move forward with are the rental inventory software, which does have a continuing annual obligation, and then the outreach campaign, which is in theory a one-time effort where they will actually they'll get letterhead from us. They'll compose a draft letter, and they will basically pull a spreadsheet from the inventory and do a mailing to all those entities, all at the same time. It doesn't mean that we still don't do mailing, maybe we do, but it just kind of doubles down on.
Do they do any follow-up after the initial
Yep,
mailing?
3 letters. So 3 letters.
So at the end of the 3 letters, then we
At
take
the end of
over.
the 3 letters, then it would be on us to follow up or substantiate that maybe they're not listed. And the inventory software does a pretty good job of tracking when they listed and how long ago it was. If there's one that shows up but hasn't listed in 2 years, get a feedback from an owner that hey, that's 2 years. That would be pretty much in line with what you see. So then at that point, you probably or versus, hey, I haven't listed in 2 years, see an active listing, for next week at that property. That's a little bit different. They have in here, they do have, stats about compliance rates and stuff like that, and it all seems really pretty good. I think other comps, town of Chester using their rental inventory.
They were listed as a reference.
Yeah.
Did we reach out or anything?
I emailed Julie, who's the manager there, and they said it's been, so far. So I don't know that we need the registration portal. I think there may be 100, but they're certainly not going to come all in at once. We do have our own form and spreadsheet that we've created. That's pretty easy to take either a check or actually a few that have already registered. What we plan on doing is just directing them to the online bill pay, and they could be that way. So that's it.
Are we gonna keep paper files or just scan everything in the system?
Probably there'll probably be a folder with one set of paper file or spreadsheet.
How many people have registered so far?
4. That's essentially without us really. It seems like it's a good tool, and the software does a lot more beyond that. If you start to get into code enforcement stuff, it has some partnerships there. We don't do code enforcement, but got a lot more things that get together.
Does anyone have any other questions? Would you like a motion or just?
Yeah, I think if you guys are comfortable with the inventory software and outreach campaign, and then those financial amounts associated with it.
I'll make a motion to accept Rob's recommendation to partner with Deckard on retail inventory and outreach campaign.
I'll second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Well, since we have Mike Rice
No, no.
here, I think we're not gonna make you wait, Mike.
I appreciate
Um,
that.
Appreciate you coming by. Obviously, it's the time of year where everyone's setting their tax rates and there's just a lot of stuff that's been going around. Communities, people are hearing about what's coming down the pike, and we wanted you to just kind of run us through it so that we have something to tell our residents when working on all this.
Yeah.
And particularly about education, but just the sort of all of the different property transfer tax, all those things that are piling up.
Yeah, sure. So, so I mean, happy to just start with, obviously, the biggest piece is the education property, tax rates set. So, I know that towns all now have their education property tax rates specifically, which is, I think, really helpful because we can stop talking about this statewide average number, which is not actually very helpful in, town by town conversations, right? And then we can talk about, I think as Jim knows from one of the 1,000 other hats he wears, the levers available to sort of adjust the property tax rate increase between sort of December 2023 and April 2024 are pretty few and far between. There was a lot of work obviously done in the legislature to find all of those levers and attempt to pull them in sort of responsible ways. To get down from that place where we were in December, which was that terrifying number that we heard of 20% or more, down to where we are, at the close of business on the legislative session, which in Dorset, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's right around 12% for homestead property tax.
Which is still pretty high.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think we all know that tax rate increases like this, just to speak personally, are not tenable or sustainable sort of in an ongoing way. And so that's why that yield bill that set those rates, and we can get in the weeds on sort of the other options that were available, and what I thought about them if you'd like, but it also created this future on the Commission on the Future of Education, which is to sort of bring together the wide array of stakeholders in this education, both delivery and financing system, and come up with real legislative, action recommendations. First, in the short term for cost containment, are there the shorter term, easier to accomplish cost containment measures that the legislature could take action on next year to start to rein in these increases and make sure that we're not just living double-digit tax increases, sort of plan in place. And then also after that, to make specific recommendations for legislative action around structural change, really addressing the potential problems that this body, would look at and say, these are the things that could change. And that's when we start to have the difficult conversations that I know all of you have been, present for at one time or another over the course of your time in Vermont about how many schools do we need, where should they be, how many classrooms, how many kids in a classroom, all these really hard conversations. There's no magic formula to say we're going to deliver education the same way and we're going to do it for a lot less money year over year. As people who plan a town budget, that's not usually how moving forward year after year budgeting works. So that's the plan, is sort of have this commission come back with real recommendations next year in the short term, a little bit after that for the longer term structural change, and try to work together to get this under control in a way that does continue to deliver that education that we but at this cost to taxpayers.
It's just a little shocking, particularly after COVID and all the money that was funneled into the schools, that it should be such a huge increase now.
Yeah.
Perhaps the money has not been efficiently spent.
Well, I wouldn't want to say that. What I will say is that one of the problems we're facing is that because those COVID dollars were supporting, real needs in our schools, right? And those COVID dollars are going away, the federal dollars are going away, but the needs aren't going away. So when it comes to things like, mental and behavioral health supports, additional para educators, these things that our schools have determined are real needs for our kids, for supporting our kids, they're not going away. And so the schools, and again, I'm telling you things you already know, but the legislature isn't making, I'll let you jump in just a second, but the legislature isn't making those decisions, right? Those decisions, the way our system is set up is that communities, school boards are coming together, determining the needs of their communities, determining what it takes to meet those needs, proposing a budget, and then the voters of those communities are approving those budgets. The legislature comes, and the way the system currently works, the legislature then gets involved and says, okay, what's the level of revenue we need to set to meet all of those local voter approved budgets all across the state? So that's what the yield bill does. That's what those legislators said. Jim, I don't know if you want.
Yeah, just wanted to kind of, if I could put my school board hat on. One thing to note, again, Mike was, trying to throw each of our towns, so has a different CLA impact,
Right.
so different rates. For Dorset, the homestead is up 11%. The highest in the Taconic and Green is 12.8%, the lowest is 2.3%. But to also give you an idea of, how we got there, you brought up the pandemic monies and all those came in. I think, I'm kind of proud of the way that Taconic and Green, dealt with that, because we really did use that for one-time purposes. One key thing, use a lot of that money to totally redo curriculum in all of our schools. That's very expensive, and we, took the opportunity for that. We did a number of things where, we avoided doing anything that was a recurring expense with those funds. And to the extent that they supported the hiring of certain people, most of those jobs were hires that were a 1 or 2 year hire. And the person knew that walking in the door, that was the expectation. We've had to extend a few of those people, but not, not big time. But, again, we're looking at, when we say, so 11% on the increase on, for Dorset's homestead tax rate, that the increase, there are really a couple of different numbers that, the key number for determining taxes is education spending. So that's, we've got our total spending and then there are revenues against it and education spending. Our total spending in Taconic and Green was up 5.7%. Education spending, which then it was up 3.8% across the Taconic and Green, and our education spending per pupil was up 0.2%.
Because the weighting.
And we have an 11% impact. One of the biggest issues is that there are a couple of big issues. One is we fund our schools on a statewide basis. And so if other schools around the state increase their spending, we have to pay for part of it.
No control.
It's our communicate, Bob Niles, he came up with a good way of putting it. He said that, best way you could think about it, 30 people go out for dinner together, everybody orders, and at the end you split the check 30 ways. Some people are winning, some people are losing. And what we had is an unusual year where a lot of schools significantly increased their spending. They had to cut it back to get their budgets passed. But still, I would say, I think we were one of the more responsible spenders.
And the increase was due to the previous legislation.
There was I gotta give the legislature credit because they're, sorry. The legislature did an oopsie last year when they, with the pupil weighting, they came up with a mechanism to try to ease that in. That was if it was, if you're, they said, we'll essentially, it was a cap on spending.
Spend a lot of money without actually the
Yeah,
repercussions of spending a lot of money.
And
Because
it-
of this sort of
So everybody-
breakdown
everybody did it.
between this piece of sort of local control over spending and not over, statewide
And it's-
education.
but there was a mechanism they used that had been used before, but this time it blew up in everybody's faces. So to the credit of the legislature, right when it was blowing up and everybody was screaming at school boards around the state, the legislature, sat down and figured out an alternative way, and they dumped the old methodology and put a new one in, which helped things work
But
for
a
this
lot
year.
of those budgets were already built, a bunch of them passed. So
There were a bunch of them passed, and then people who padded their budgets a lot, and then cut a couple $1 million down after, increasing it by 5 million, and then passed, at day one, when all the budgets got put together, we were looking at an increase in education spending of $240 million. And, you also have to recognize, well, when people, got out their pencils and sharpened them a bit and all, we still had like 170, 180 million increase in spending. Some of that is because of programs we're required to fund at the local level. You got in programs that a lot of people like, things like, the universal school meals,
Which
which
is what, $26 million?
about that.
Well, it's a little bit lower, actually. It came in significantly
24.
under the.
Original was, 3640 and it came in
what's the
24.
participation rate is now?
But it's,
I don't have the stats off the top of my face, but or top of my head, but I know that it has significantly increased participation from
Mhm.
prior to universal health. It's also the way our program specifically in Vermont, because a number of states have obviously taken this direction since COVID. The way our program is built is specifically designed to draw down the maximum number of federal dollars for school nutrition programs and also to qualify significantly more families for summer nutrition assistance, that federal dollars, some nutrition assistance. So it is being lifted up as a national model for how to make sure that kids have the
Yeah.
nutrition they need at school.
couple of us locally were, we were, David Chandler and I on the Vermont School Board Association board. David's stepped off now, but we were trying to argue that we didn't necessarily need to go to quite that level, but we were viewed as evil people who hated kids because we said that. But,
And I think, well, you just sit down and have the whole discussion. I think that, if anything, how do we not have that, when the whole discussion about structural change starts to happen? How does that not, that's gonna be the first thing.
that has to be on there.
How can anything change when
But-
one side of
but-
the discussion is just so entrenched?
But another big factor for the year that I think it's just good people to recognize is that so education spending gets fed from the education fund. The education fund is about 2/3 property taxes. And you gotta recognize too, the property taxes includes all those rebate sort of items. So,
Yeah.
that's like 170 million bucks off of property taxes. But there are property taxes and then there are a bunch of other taxes, sales and use and stuff like that. That's about 1/3 of the bucket. The sales and use and all those taxes was basically projected to be flat for the year. So when you had a big increase in spending, 100% of that increase had to get laid on the property tax. So the tax that was funding 2/3 of spending had to cover 100% of the increase. So that's one of the reasons you had, on a statewide basis, you had education spending going up, the first estimates were like, 12%, but property taxes were going up to like 16%. Is because, you've essentially property tax is always where they
Yeah, I think,
got the money.
from my perspective, for Dorset, we're a third of the way into the reappraisal. So we'll finish that next year. That is actually gonna kind of change some of the outlook on what, the way things play out for us next year, because the rate will have new higher values, we'll have lower rates. People will be somewhat confused, you may pay more, you may pay less, who knows? But in theory, it's gonna kind of detract from the year-to-year increase, but Manchester is actually probably the example that we should be looking at, because they're 2 years ahead of us. And their rate went from $1.47 to $1.10. This is Homestead, $1.10, now it's $1.24. And, one of the concerns that I would have is, at what point are we starting to really eat into, primary home ownership and the load that they have to bear? Once the value has gone up significantly, rates are regular before, then I think and really kind of eating into people's ability to afford to live here.
And, I mean, I
Um,
just heard anecdotally about someone in Manchester, who their property taxes have just doubled.
It
In
goes from
just the last 2
$1.24 back
years.
up to $1.40.
And
it's,
They're pretty close to where they
retired on a
were,
fixed
now the
income.
house is
Yep.
worth 25
It's,
to
it
30%
is,
more.
it is, it's a real problem. One thing I'll just kind of say for, questions are welcome, but, personally, I have some hopes and, again, I'm involved at the statewide level too, so things like this Commission for the Future of Public Education. That, we've got some local representation on that. And that Jennifer Samuelson, who's the chair of Win Hall, is also the State Board of Education chair, and she is on the steering committee. Also Oliver Olson, he's a representative of the Vermont Independent Schools Association on that group. And then, I'm big on the VSBA board, we appointed somebody who used to be the head of the executive director of the Vermont School Board Association, very good, and is on the steering committee, Nicole Mace. There's some good people on that committee and the chair of that group is I don't really know her well, but Megan Roy, who has a reputation, very good reputation of getting things done. So there's some good people on that committee. The idea is to really, we were asked to kind of give our suggestions into what to do. And some of the suggestions are, feel free to just rip the whole system, the whole, the formula and
Politics
stuff.
of this, we're talking about a 14% increase. We don't want a 14% increase. One side is saying, well, you're evil and you're not like children.
Well,
Right.
yeah,
How
but
are we gonna go?
Well,
But I mean-
obviously, that's not
There
helpful.
but there's a, yeah,
Yeah, well,
but the,
that's the reality of it.
but,
I mean,
but it's, there's,
That's where that ended.
but that's what you have to get through.
Governor vetoed it, it got overridden.
That's what you have to get through. Well, the veto override, it would have been incredibly ugly if the veto hadn't been overridden. I've got the joint,
what?
the veto weren't overridden.
30% increases on non-homestead, so.
Oh, yeah.
Business owners facing.
It would have
30%
been-
Tax increase.
It was not a good outcome, but
Huge deficits in the education fund, it just wasn't, it just was not, I mean. Absolutely
So how do
acceptable.
we not have the same thing happen next year?
Right,
That's-
exactly.
that's where,
Because you didn't
Too
fix it.
little,
So
too late.
where,
Like, we already
where
have
are the
this
main
increase.
pressure points
Yep.
in this increase in funding? Is it programming? Is it deferred maintenance on buildings?
Is it
Defer-
small schools that
Is
should have
it
gotten
the
closed down?
healthcare plan? Where are these huge increases happening? Because we look at our school, right? Our schools, they stay in their lane. The only problem that we have is that we don't have enough kids moving away.
Right.
We're not.
but again,
building $50 million new facilities, and the
Again-
equalized thing is what it is.
but please recognize that, what I said earlier was our per pupil spending
Right.
didn't really change. Dorset tax rate for education is up 11%.
Right, and our kids got more at that.
Yeah,
So
no, I
is
don't
it-
think
but-
anybody's
but
paying the figure
where-
you, Jim.
It's,
Right.
no, but
Yeah.
Statewide, because it's. a
but I'm
talking
saying
about
the state, on a
Promise the
statewide,
statewide.
but when you say, what can we do about it? I'm worried about next year is we have, as a district, we'll be coming out with something in the near future publicly. We had kind of planned to do it before all this discussion got started, but it'll be out soon. Trying to give some of the details, but you know, we are, as our school districts are very much focused on trying to control those increases in spending. We have, you know, some hopes that this commission can actually get something going. One of the key items on that is going to have to be closing small schools, because that has been run into a buzzsaw, you know, a whole lot. And, you know, we're gonna be facing that within our district too. And a lot of people are, you know, and in some ridiculous cases, you know, where they're running into that problem. That was a part of when Act 46 came and the consolidation of governance structures. You know, the only way that got passed was by saying that we won't force you guys to close your schools. And now some, you know, folks are getting forced to kind of, that we're getting to the point where that's having to be forced. So that is a factor. There are a lot of things that probably can be done better. I mean, I don't know the answer. I wish it were that easy, but I did have the answer. But
Are there more students in the system than there were?
no, it's a
before COVID?
continued trickle down. Ours, you know, locally, you know, we've been
yeah, locally,
flat,
there's
kind
no
of
bump.
flat,
Yeah.
actually, you know, recently,
Well,
but
it's COVID.
yeah. But on a statewide basis, it continues to trickle down a few percent a year, you know.
You know, the thing that's so concerning is just sort of this, because I know, and I've been trying to put it all together, all the things I'm hearing about, and, you know, just again, anecdotally, the payroll tax that's coming on, and
Yep.
most small businesses, they're just having to eat that, or they're gonna lose their employees, but then they're not gonna be able to afford to keep their employees. The property transfer tax, which has almost tripled.
Only on houses that are not going.
But that's going to
That's our
put a
industry.
damper.
That's the
It's gonna put a
industry.
damper, yeah, on real estate. If you look back before
Yeah.
COVID, everybody's sort of forgotten that was the world before COVID.
Yeah.
Those properties were sitting on the market for 7
Yeah.
years and they were being sold at half their value.
Yeah.
If they sold at all, which is why we never had a reappraisal, because we didn't have any comps to
Right.
show for it.
Right.
So all of these things together are making it unsustainable. How do we convince people to come to Vermont?
I think, so, I think there are two different ways of talking about these things. I think, you know, you refer to it as a payroll tax, and it is that. It's a payroll tax of 0.44%, less than one half, 1%, which can be split between the employer and the employee, 0.33%, 0.11%, or the employer can choose to take on the whole thing. And that is what is funding this transformational change in our childcare system. Seeing thousands more spots open up, seeing thousands more family receive funding to make it more possible to send their kids to childcare, and more possible now that those spots are also opening, while increasing pay for the people who are providing that care. Those are also things that convince people to stay, or to come to Vermont.
Well, maybe, but you've also got a very high income tax rate. You've got some of the highest electricity costs in the country. I mean, all of those things, when people are looking at jobs who can't get doctors in the hospitals and things like that, it's everything all together. It's not that those programs are
housing.
great, but it's, are we pushing our residents out? And I say this because this is what I'm hearing from people. It's like that show, everything, everywhere, all at once. It's just all
Yeah,
these
trust me,
different layers.
I hear
I
from
think,
people
I
too.
mean,
Like,
really,
what are we doing to bring businesses in?
back to the property tax issue, the increased value, the trajectory of the increased rate upwards. I think that's really concerning for low income, working family. But the home ownership is already like mortgage rates at 7%, no inventory, and now, you know, hundreds of dollars a month. Increase itself. It's gonna be hard. It's gonna be tough, and I don't, like, you're not gonna know until you see this for sale signs go up, and I think that's Like, that's not a way to find out that it's too far, you know, that it's the threshold, or that's the limit. Should be before that, we should
Right,
be able to know and predict that this is probably what's gonna happen if we push it to that degree. There's some that, yeah,
It's-
it's gonna afford it,
One,
pay for it, but there's gonna be lots that can't.
one thing I just want to throw out for this year was a tough year. We've since I've been working with the school boards for a lot of years, one thing I've seen is every time you make a major adjustment to the system, it's almost effectively designed to force increases in spending around the state. The pupil weighting was one of those major adjustments to the financing system this year. So we had it when Act 60 came out first, and you put together the statewide funding, that forced all the spending up. Actually, you've had, a few of those events over the years. Act 46 actually, could have saved money, but a lot of places have forced spending up. You've got, every time they do a major rejigger of the system, it's actually forced an overall increase in education spending. We had one this year. Hopefully that will tail off in terms of that impact. And honestly, I just think one of the things that scares me is a lot of the solutions that have been suggested to get the education spending underway, I think would totally backfire. And so I'm kind of concerned about some of the steps that folks want to take at the state level are not going to curtail spending. They're going to actually, got to create new bizarre incentives for districts to act in weird ways. So I think, I'm really hopeful that I know, I was involved through VSBA and through our local districts in arguing that we absolutely need something like this Commission on the Future of Education to get, because what we were looking at was there were a handful of, no offense, man, handful of legislators who seemed to think they had all the solutions and wanted to just rewrite the system themselves. We said, hold on, you have to be, have the education and,
I'd like to just go on record and say,
you were definitely not one of those.
and that is, I mean, that's what we heard from all of the sort of stakeholders was, please don't make some kind of drastic change this year in this time when we are between sort of pouring our budget fast. That would be a disaster. And so we avoided that. And there, I think as you're talking through it, there is not a consensus yet, and there's not an easy solution. But what I do see is, and admittedly with nothing to compare it to in the building, first 2 years there, I do see a sort of reckoning that people are having that there's got serious actions, both on the delivery side that we were talking about, and potentially on the funding side, on that sort of matter of the disconnection between spending decisions and budget decisions and all, and sort of and where the funds come from, all of that. I think everything's on the table in a way that it seems maybe not everything has been on the table quite so.
And when you have,
Could you just give an overall description of this commission? Is it a combination of legislators?
I've got all the,
Private business?
But yes, basically it's
a
folks from across
broad-based-
the sort of
okay.
education system stakeholders, plus legislators.
Yeah.
Some appointed by the governor, some appointed by the Senate, some appointed by the
Yeah.
House.
this is,
Timeframe on this commission?
it's actually gonna extend. They're supposed to be starting to try to come out with, some ideas by the next legislative session.
Yeah.
But it's gonna continue to operate for beyond that.
Yeah. So like
Uh,
this,
the-
the sort of short-term cost containment recommendation are what we've asked for to come back first. So that if there are those pieces standing like next year in times for 26. That.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because this is not sustainable. You
No, and
can't have
this-
another year like this would drive people.
But
out.
I'll give you one, one thing that I had as concern, whenever you get a big commission that's gonna, redo things. We do actually have representation who is looking out for our system of education on this on this commission.
Having Oliver in the room and Jenny Sampson.
Yeah. But so the House, the people are on it. It's, Senator Ann Cumming, who's the chair of Senate Finance. Jennifer Samuelson, who's, local head of the State Board of Education. Peter Conlon, who's the head of the House Committee on Education. Nicole Mace from the Vermont School Board Association, who's tons of fabulous experience. The Vermont Association of School Board Officers has a representative. The Agency of Education, it'll be the new secretary. The tax commissioner, the head of the Vermont Superintendents Association, the head of the Vermont Principals Association, and it's chaired by, Megan Roy, who has a background in special ed, as a superintendent. She was chair of the Act 173 committee that redid all the funding for special education, and now she took Dan French's old job of teaching superintendents from St. Michael's College. So we have it. It's a
There a chance that a study on expanded school choice could be an
Part of that.
alternative that they look at, or is that just not started?
I mean, I think probably it's a non-starter with some of the people on that list, and I have an exciting prospect to others, so I think that it'll be a space for all of those ideas to
But
come
I
out.
mean, it's potentially a low hanging way for, you'd have to set it up in a way that, I guess they're just local.
I do not expect that to be a road people will be going down quickly.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think that.
What we're
to me,
looking at
that's
is-
just- That's an indication that we're gonna be here having the same
More of the same.
conversation in 12 months.
Well,
That's
could be.
Yeah, and it's not, no,
I'm
it's not.
more optimistic than that. I've got this, and I do sort of have a bit of an inside track on what's going on because,
So
just-
are we gonna have staffing ratios that are gonna be?
I expect that we will
Portion
see it much more. I think I expect it's likely that school closures will be a big item. Will student teacher ratios will be, the problem in the state of Vermont is, when you try to come up with hard and fast rules, and then you keep on finding all these cases where it just doesn't make sense. So you end up having to provide some flexibility to the rules, and then you wonder whether or not you're accomplishing anything. But I do expect there are going to be. I honestly think that issue of whether we have too many. I think we do have too many
Staff,
schools.
What's the adult to student ratio? Not student, not teacher, adult.
I don't know what it's around the state. There, you can look it up online for every district.
Any idea, Mike? What's the teacher ratio?
I don't know that off the top of my head. But I could get it for you. But
How do they compare to other states? I think those are.
versus other state, we're expensive and we've got a lot more
It's like-
people
it's
working
like
on it.
eight, 9, 10 to 1 teacher, and that's 4 or 5 to 1 that,
Which I think we've got to make some.
and I could be totally wrong.
That is one of the levers to pull, and so I expect that because I think we could improve on that. I found over time it's, even with it became easier to pull those levers when we merged as a bigger district, which also gave us the ability to consider whether or not we could close a school or something, which we never had before we got to the scale. We're also looking at, since focused on is the potential for, building a regional middle school that actually can have some real opportunities for some cost savings. But it also means that you're rejiggering all of our students and where they are. And, you know, one of the key things that, you know, that the clearly, you know, like Woodstock, well, there hasn't been the ability to do any
They have a
building.
Failing infrastructure.
They do.
That's-
And they had to pull off they had to abandon any idea of bonding for it. Well, the first thing got voted down, and then they were about to present a new, you know, they were trying to figure out what do we present to the town, you know, to the town. And actually, due to some legislative changes and all that, they said, actually, we are going to present absolutely nothing because we can't.
I think there's some hope too. I mean, it's been almost 2 decades since there was.
Yeah,
state-
that doesn't scare you. I mean, that to me, I mean, it was, I'm not sure where the article, that the numbers that, you know, deferred maintenance.
Yeah.
essentially.
Well, the study came out with a number of $6 billion.
Exactly.
And that's in addition to what we're talking about changing.
Yep.
There's-
Well, those numbers are also, because the state did an assessment of all the buildings. We did our own assessment tied into looking at the middle school and came up with very different answers from what the state came up with. So the state, that $6 billion was a dumb number, but,
Well, if you don't build or maintain schools for 20.
they start to fall apart.
And then it's too late.
And it's things start getting tucked into operating budgets. That is,
Right.
without that
Yeah.
assistance coming from a different pot.
Whereas that money, if it's capital stuff, really should be spread out.
Which, you know, we luckily, again, I think our schools are well run, so we have, you know, back when it was just the Dorset School District, for years, I was trying to have us have a 5-year capital maintenance plan. And, you know, it's tough to kind of get that in place, and now we have for all 6 of our schools, we have very long-term capital plans as to what needs to be done. But that's all just straighten our budgets. You know, it's not like we're bonding for it or anything. So, and we have to replace gym floors and replace full heating system. That's another thing that we did a lot with the money in our HVAC systems. We spent a lot of money on those from federal dollars.
Mike, do you know the property transfer tax for the second home loan? For that big increase? Is that earmarked for a specific fund, or is that just general fund, or where does that go?
Yeah, so, and forgive me because this idea sort of was attached to several different, potential sources, what it would fund. It ended up getting moved into a different bill entirely on the Senate side, but back to us at the end. My understanding, so one thing, and it's possible that this is all of the dollars, one thing that it's doing is lowering the property transfer tax on homes that are being purchased by low and moderate income folks through any number of different, public grants, be it USDA or FHA state programs that either lend or otherwise are involved in the home purchase process. Basically, currently, it's a threshold of up to the first $100,000 value of that
Now
property.
it's 200.
Now it's 200, and the funding for that is coming from that increase on the second.
So it's,
But my understanding
There's
is,
a lot more money though.
yeah, a portion of it is going to Lake
Give them a
Champlain
couple thousand.
rehab.
10,000.
And
Well, no,
another
the
portion-
water
Clean
quality
water.
piece is separate, already
was
a separate piece. that
couple
was
years
there now.
ago.
Yeah.
I thought
That's-
the water is already adding to the education tax, is it not?
The water
Is that not
quality.
a part of it? Is there a percentage?
Yeah, so there's a small percentage that's tacked on to the property transfer.
Oh,
tax.
For the clean water, that's.
And that's to meet EPA requirements, basically, of clean water projects.
But I understand 83% of that increase is going to the general.
I don't have the numbers off that. I'd be happy to get back to you on that and chat. with you.
83% of the increase of
the property
Property
transfer tax.
is going into the general fund?
Yeah.
Not to property.
No, some,
not to educate.
So,
no,
The property transfer tax piece was completely separate from, that was not a part of the.
Tool
Right.
that was trying to be used to do the job.
some of it is gonna help with the Act 250 changes and,
Which is the bill that actually. 687.
right. right. But 83% is going to the general fund. So were you aware of that change in the transfer tax emerging and happening? I mean, it seemed like a lot of people didn't even hear about it until suddenly you
Yeah,
look at
there were
the
lots of conversations about a change in the property transfer tax, but, one of the conversations was, a change for all properties valued over a certain amount. It would be a change only on the value over that threshold. There were lots of different conversations. The piece that ended up in that Act 250 bill at the end came about at the very end of the session, coming over from the Senate's version of this H 687 that had started in the House. So it was very.
and seemingly not very.
Anything that's over 750 that's not a primary.
It's everything that is not, it's everything that's not a primary. So it's everything, property inhabitable,
Commercial property.
not camps or things like that. That is not either, homestead property or, has a certificate, a landlord certificate, so something that's gonna be rented out.
So a commercial business person that was buying a property.
I believe that's correct, but again,
Be
this is a switch right at the end, so I would wanna make sure I got the details.
Just in a town where 50% of our buildings are second homes. And as far as a grand list value, I bet you it's much higher.
That's a disproportionate impact
It's
on our towns and just a few towns.
I hear that.
but we need to hear you, like, how about a compromise here? Do we need to triple the change, or, can we find something that's a little less impactful? It just seems like the old town money grab
Right,
again,
and having that 83% go to
general
the
fund.
general fund.
general
So-
fund. I mean,
The
to
14%.
not have that, we've got all this, just whisper, we've got all this, talking about education. We've got this giant pot of money now that's just gonna go to.
So only 13% of that increase is actually going into education, and the rest is going into general fund?
Wait, no,
I
none
don't
of
think
it's
any of
going-
that's
No,
much.
no.
Housing. It's gonna-
None-
it's-
None of
piece
the
is-
property transfer taxes
A
going.
the
property
property
transfer
transfer
tax
tax.
is a completely separate sort of piece of.
Not the
conversation.
property tax.
Related
Right,
to,
right,
and what the question was
Yeah.
is, how much of this is gonna go into housing and
Gotcha.
how much is gonna go.
Education got like, they did a, downloaded software. and a few
Right, we
other things
lifted,
like
there was
that.
there was an exemption on the tax on things on the cloud. That got lifted, so that was one of the levers that tried to pull in money into the ed fund to relieve the burden on property tax rates. There were a couple other small pieces like that, but no sort of, like Jim was explaining, no lever to replace the fact that the other third was stagnant, so it had to, largely made up.
Will the commission be able to make recommendations outside of the education fund, like structural changes to AHS, the other?
I don't
This
know
is-
how deeply they're gonna go into that, but what they
This is
will,
Commission on the Future of
Yeah.
Public Education.
but what they can do is make recommendations on structurally how education is funded.
Spend money in AHS just like we do in the ed fund.
Oh, well, no, that is,
There's more than-
that is gonna be a very, I will
Just-
guarantee
there's
you-
money there, I guess.
I will guarantee you that that's a major thing because, that's over the years. Schools are providing a lot of the social services that the state would normally for other entities.
Right, there's a big part of the conversation.
Yeah, if that's,
There are mental
That's
health,
a-
behavioral
that
health,
should be
and
paid for
community
outside of the-
services that are being offered in schools, and is that funding that should be coming out of the ed fund, or should it be coming somewhere else?
We're
With the
also,
recognition that somewhere else is still
Our-
arrived at via, tax rate.
our school district, like every year, in our schools, we actually pay a lot of money to the, to folks like UCS and other social service agencies to provide social services in our schools out of our school budget. That's that. It's just, it's always been viewed that the schools are a really good place to deliver all those things, so, so go ahead and
Well,
deliver them,
property
but we don't get any money for it.
And the thing is, it is true, we're seeing a lot of success in these pilots of community schools, programs that are sort of delivering more of the services. It is a really effective way to deliver services to families. I think the crux of the question is, how should it be paid for? Should it be happening? Should we be pulling that out of the ed fund, which is really established?
Which is where it all comes from. That's why I've been one of my, pet peeves with the legislature over the years, except for Mike, but except for all our local guys. But, over the years, it's almost every time there's some sort of expenditure and I'm like, well, how are we gonna pay for that? No, oh, don't worry about that. Just, it comes out of the ed fund.
Yeah, but when you,
I'm like,
at some point.
Yeah, that's what
Can
we
you
got a
be all
problem with.
things to all people?
No, and it's, when it comes out of the ed fund, that doesn't mean, that's what we're talking about, these increases. But I think there have been legislators over time who viewed that if it comes out of the ed fund, then it's not a big deal. It's not coming out of the general fund.
Yep, something here too. The frustrating term, off the top of the, that's not a thing, it's funded by.
Right.
Yes.
Off the top.
Mike, can I just ask you a question? Is there talk up there about doing things to entice or encourage businesses to come here? Because you can only, I guess some of the frustration, at least that I'm hearing from other people around town, is that you can only keep taxing the same small group of people so long before there's nothing left. So the way to get more money other than just raising taxes every year is to try to increase your base. And if, you're doing things like you're making things very unaffordable, that can be a disincentive, but are they actually trying to create incentives for businesses and small businesses to succeed? Or is there anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I will say, and I'll talk about other things in a moment, but I will say that I view things like the childcare expansion as an enticement for business, because when you're looking at, there are always going to be certain sectors that are easier to bring to a rural state with low population density and separated infrastructure, and there are going to be sectors that I think are places we look to more in the future. What kinds of jobs businesses bring here, and I think those kinds of businesses are going to be the ones where when they're looking to move here, maybe they're looking to move or establish a headquarters or create a number of jobs in a certain industry. The people they're looking to hire are people who are asking, well, what's the childcare system like? Am I going to be able to afford? It's a 2-parent household. We both have career tracks. Are we going to be able to afford to continue working and send our kids to childcare, or is it going to make sense, like it unfortunately has for years in Vermont, for one of us to stay home and one of us to work because we pay more for childcare, for our 2 kids than the other. Those kinds of conversations, I think, are relevant to sort of encouraging the right kind of business growth. I also think that there's a lot of sort of, I was involved, unfortunately, it didn't get across the finish line this time, but with trying to do a real study, which we've never done, on what the impact of the outdoor rec industry is. Because we know anecdotally it's huge, tons of jobs, tons of money. We know from federal stats that we're the 2nd highest GDP outdoor rec economy statewide, 2nd only to Hawaii. But we don't know sort of regional data on what the drivers are. We obviously, all of us who sit here in Dorset know that mountain biking is a huge piece of the outdoor rec economy, but we don't have the numbers on it. So what I was hoping to do was to do that study and then to use that as a way to channel investments, trying to encourage outdoor rec economy businesses to come. You see up in Polton, the trails went in up there. It has revived Main Street in downtown Polton. There are now 2 bike shops and a cafe and a place for lunch. And these are all sort of directly related to smaller investments in that outdoor rec infrastructure.
I would say, state just needs to, I mean, the study I understand, but it's just gonna end up regulating and revenues being pulled from those areas. I
Yep.
think it's all, is unfortunate. I'm not saying that's your intent, it definitely isn't, but like, that's just, something could happen.
Yeah,
and-
fund Boric, just
Like-
get
I mean,
as
Warwick
much,
was deeply
as
involved
much
in
Here we
Boric
go.
funding as there can be. To keep, because it's doing it, it's happening on its own.
For sure.
that. Warwick was deeply involved in. supporting
Yep.
that.
And, yeah, the outdoor rec industry it's a huge driver. Hiking, biking. Camping.
Yeah, there's the diversity of outdoor rec opportunities in the state, I think, is, just as a sort of off the cuff.
That's one of the
answer,
things that's
One of the
happened.
places where I think we're doing work to encourage that is in this sort of growing industry. I think there's a
And I
lot of.
contend it's partially growing, because it's not overly regulated. Like
Yep.
some other stuff. And it's in the minutia, but that's where it counts. Stop or.
Yeah, although, I would say, I would point to, one of the things that comes up often is like, when you're building a bike trail and it starts to trigger Act 250. And it's like, well, we can all get together and say, well, that's not the intention necessarily of Act 250. Not to build a bike trail through a forest or something like that. And I think there are places where we could agree.
There's plenty of people that don't agree with that.
Yeah, but I'm saying, I think there are places for agreement to move forward.
So here's
with
a nice
this,
full circle for you though. The workforce development, no one is tapping into the workforce development angle of the outdoor rec industry. Building trails, figuring all of that.
Well,
kind of
Vermont
stuff.
Works for Women, there are a bunch of organizations that are actually doing really
But
exciting.
all of Southern, everyone's got stuff going on all over Southern Vermont and you can't find qualified people. And it's a great learning opportunity.
Yeah, BYCC is
Kids
another.
Oh, yeah.
Did anybody else have anything? I really appreciate you coming and sorry to put you on the hot
No,
seat,
no, no,
but this
I
is
mean,
what people are talking
yeah,
about. And as we're doing our own tax rate and everybody's wondering like, what the heck's going on? There's a lot that's not in our control and it's hard to get it all from the different papers.
No,
figure out what's going
I
on.
really appreciate the conversation and I appreciate you not getting it. And coming to me, I mean, I hope you all see me as a resource to, just to ask what's going on, to see what's up with any, if I don't know the answer, I'll go get it. That's, I think, a big part of my job, so always happy.
But since you,
Like, do you see the supermajority as an opportunity maybe to fix these things? Or do you see it as a liability, especially for Dorset?
Honestly, I see it as a term that gets used a lot more outside of the building and in that sort of like broad political conversation than, I mean, it's a super majority, right? It's 105, in the case of the end of the session last year, 105 Democrats. They come from places like Burlington, they come from places like the Northeast Kingdom, from Woodstock, from Dorset, I mean, so they have widely varying views. We have widely varying views on all of these topics. And so it's not like it's 105 people sort of walking in lockstep on the issue and saying yes or no, however we're supposed to. It's about building consensus about the governing body and then having responsibility to try to move forward on that. So it's a word that gets used a lot sort of out here, but it's not the way I see the sort of majority government.
kind of related to that, I've seen over time, legislative leadership trying to exert extreme influence on, across a lot of people. I don't know whether sometimes it's, that's concerned me when people aren't allowed to have their own views or anything like that. Is that, you don't see that as a real?
I honestly, I mean, I'm sure, has it happened? Does it happen in the course of legislative work? I'm sure. I think it's something that is more of a sort of talking point about the machinations of government than something that's really, I've had, lengthy, in-depth conversations about that. I, see something, why I have to, and at the end of the day, if we can't build consensus, if I can't have my, piece heard or whatever, I'm free to vote the way that I see it. I think, independent schools are a great example of that. You know, there are places where, where the, support for the system as it is much more drawn on geographic regional lines than is on political lines. Have folks, in this part of the state who are part of the Democratic majority who, maybe if they had their druthers would go a certain direction on independent schools, but we take it upon ourselves to advocate strongly for the power of the system, serving our kids and doing a great job of providing to them. And either, depending on the conversation, they listen to that argument from us and change course, or, if need be, those sort of geographic sects stand together and vote to support our kids.
Yeah, just, and I'm sure you do this. I'm a civil engineer, so I deal mostly agency and natural resources. And what I see every time a bill gets passed is that it's designed for Chittenden County and the shape of Chittenden County, and then it gets forced down into other parts of the state where it doesn't make sense. So I would just say I don't have a problem to remember that different than up there, and whatever shape, whatever bill that may take place, education, environment, whatever, just to be a strong advocate for Southern Vermont, because we are wildly different, and every day I'm dealing with something that somebody put in because, this is great for water bearing. It makes no sense.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I hope that I bring that to my work every day, but it's always, it's always good to hear reminders and specific reminders about some of the ways in which it affects your work.
Okay, well, thank you, Mike.
Yeah, thank you all. Appreciate it. I hope you don't have too much more of an agenda left.
Oh, yeah.
Well, thank
We'll
you.
be quick.
Have a good
Thank
night.
you.
Thanks, Mike.
Bye.
We'll run on to the tax rate.
Okay.
So moved.
Town tax rate. Town tax. On the table, so disregard everything that was in your packet. Because,
It's all wrong.
Because,
only done this for
Because?
16 years, and,
Made a mistake.
there's new info on the table. What was in the packet was incorrect, so it's been adjusted. You can see that the rate from year to year for the town has gone from 0.3514 to 0.3717. Out of the increase, which is a little more than 2 cents, about 1.7 cents of that is the town office bond. If you recall from year to year, increased the kind of the number that was in the budget up to what it's actually going to be. There's also a fair amount of stuff in the budget that is associated with some of the kind of short-term, the heating of 2 buildings, stuff like that, that is kind of embedded in the operating budget. So when you add those 2 things up, that's kind of what you end up with as far as the town office transition as associated to the increase of the budget.
What was last year's rate?
0.3515.
1.5.
Yeah, it's on this one, right?
Here's last year.
Oh, I'm not. I knew I saw it somewhere.
And you'll see the town tax, which is total budget less fire tax. You see the fire protective tax, and then you see the shortfall, which is an exemption for a few disabled veterans, and then
What do we do for the disabled veterans?
so they get a
Property tax break?
yeah, they get a like the first $40,000 of value. They get a $40,000 assessment reduction on the value of the house. I think up to 40. And that money and the Wilson House are that 0.0019. Something like that.
We sign this one. So we would need a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the
tax
124
rate
Dorset
as
Street.
presented.
A second,
Second,
all in favor, say aye.
I,
I know, we're before that.
Business.
Jump into that one.
And new
It's fine.
business.
So,
Yep.
new town office update, site work and ledge removal, ledge removal is mostly done. We are gained some efficiencies around, I won't get too much into the minutia, but, instead of trucking the ledge out, they're gonna crush it on site and structural fill, for the building, so it's, yeah.
I went by, it was
When-
impressive what they were doing.
Winds,
how do you
kind of a
crush
winds-
that on?
you bring in a
Yeah.
crusher.
Portable crusher.
Really?
You should go
When
and
did they
take a
crush
look.
it?
It's
Are they crushing it
right
as we
there,
speak?
literally right there.
They're doing it now?
I don't know if they finished.
Wait,
but-
so they blow it up?
They drill, blow it up, get it into big pieces, and now they're gonna crush it down to 3-inch fineness, essentially.
it's gonna violate our noise ordinance.
And they're going
Generating a lot of
it's been
fill.
going on for a couple of weeks, so it's actually,
We thought someone was hunting.
it's actually
It's not- it
tailing
hasn't-
off, so the
It
blasting's
hasn't been
done.
as loud lately.
Yeah, the blasting's done, the drilling's mostly done, now they're running the crusher, they're getting the fill that's needed, and they're getting, in theory, they were trying to be the later part of this week pouring footings. So,
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So they're gonna, they get right into it.
Nice.
We're to the point now where we're about to kick off probably. Kind of what goes on from week to week, but Nail and Green is, I think, 3 spots of found efficiencies, all 3 of which will save us money, so hopefully that can, when there's things that don't save money, those things can equal out. But they just, their staff is great. Everything's going really well so far. At Reed Farm Lane, we are still on track for the August 15th closing. My understanding, the operations have ceased there. We are also just awaiting, some feedback from Vermont Emergency Management about the, reapplying for Brookside Drive and rebuilding. FEMA has said that they think it would get, approval, so once we get some more info, we can make that application. We did a little bit of work related to one of the, concerns we got last month with regard to speeding on 30. The park was out there for a little bit. We have increased, some limited patrols during the week. So there will be, like Saturday, we'll have 2 patrol cars here. On both sides, on separate sides, and to try to react to some of speeding in traffic. Rest of it, the only other thing of note is, if you
I didn't-
recall. go ahead.
Didn't MSK already help us with the speed gun? So,
So MSK,
Seem to remember
developed the crosswalk plan,
yeah.
if you remember. So the idea there is we're gonna have them, put their heads together for something that's maybe a little more, something like, but, they had a sidewalk on 7, back to sidewalk on Village. That's something you had, trees, road, things that kind of make it look and feel more like a village. That might be a nice way to improve the look of the village. And also work to achieve that, squeezing of the road and behavior people down long term. That's kind of the job that they're tasked with. Actually. Not an easy one, but we'll see what they can come up with. Just some, some concept ideas. Try to have a discussion with V-Trans about making some improvements. See if that starts to set the stage. That the end goal, which is to try to reduce.
Because Rob, Now, I can't remember whether this was real or not. Wasn't one of the concepts to put like a little island in the middle?
Mhm.
But was it V-Trans who said look into that?
Don't want it.
Yeah, I'm not sure, I'd have to go back and look
Yeah,
at
they
maybe
didn't say
minutes
no,
and
they
stuff.
just.
It's a lot of, like, anything that you
Tom Smith
propose
era.
has to meet their,
Okay.
has to meet their muster.
Yes.
Um,
I was just trying to remember, I just vaguely remember that in one of those proposals, there was something in
Yeah.
the middle, and there was
I
some
mean,
reason we
so-
didn't do it.
to put it shortly, they see the section of Route 7 as a connector to the divided highway. They see that's the purpose it serves. We all live here and have to
Yeah.
navigate it, so we need to do a better job of saying, no, it's not just a connector to this track. People live here. There's stuff that goes on. And that's the effort that hopefully MSK can help with, is there stuff that we can do north to south of the village.
It just makes it look.
Make it more village.
Yeah,
Right.
it makes it look more like a village.
That's a,
Maybe some fake buildings.
Or, or other pieces of infrastructure like the
Blazing
sidewalk
saddles,
idea,
Right.
that's kind of the, that is a different take than just trying to do a speed study and trying to have a policeman out there to run patrol.
It's just
Because
Band-Aids.
it's unlikely that we'll get what we're looking for in that with that. The next
Yes, have a-
piece.
a fake daycare, little fake kids.
The right of way through there is actually really big, and that's one of the things that does offer opportunity, that maybe MSK can come up with something that, that I'm not smart enough to think of. Wouldn't be hard, so. Prentice Pond Dam, we threw our hat in the ring for some hazard mitigation. Not really funding, but they have a pre-application, there's a lot of money associated with last year's storm. When you have a storm event with FEMA, it makes you, the state becomes eligible for an allotment of hazard mitigation money kind of in relation to the damage of the storm. So there's $90 million, now, there's gonna be a lot more, probably 6 months from now in this next storm, but, for hazard mitigation efforts, one of the things we're doing a study of Prentice Pond Dam, the level of severity in terms of if it were to fail was upgraded to significant last year. Hoping that maybe that'll potentially make it eligible for some funding. We don't have the study yet done. The tea leaves on that is that it is likely that it's going to say, here's what needs to be done to replace the drop inlet that goes under Church Street that's failing right now. And also the dam it's failing, it's been failing for a long time. So it'll make some recommendations. There's going to be a price tag associated with that. And there's very little, there's a little bit of highway funding that may partially be applicable. There's other funding, there's not a ton of funding. So if we could potentially win some funding for this effort, it could be really helpful.
Not to
Hundreds
jam
of
my
thousands
finger
of dollars.
directly into the hornet's nest, but has there been any talk of just decommissioning it and getting rid of the pond? I don't know. I'm sure people would be angry. I'm just curious.
Not formally, Frank, no. No.
I've looked at the pond and.
It's your job.
Right, what's wrong with you?
I'm just, asking questions.
No.
I know it's a long time future.
It
I was
would
curious
so-
if that was.
It would.
I don't think they have beavers in Prentice Pond, do they?
No, there are.
I've never
And
seen
you
them.
could survey the town.
I'll go around personally.
To Frank's point,
I'd like to get rid of the pond.
there's
What do you think?
there's 100% funding associated with that.
With what?
Dam road.
So if we just had a
You-
big
which-
marshy
You'd
pile
have a
of mud,
bridge, you'd have a
Right.
bridge
You'd
instead
have a
of
bridge.
you'd have a bridge instead
and
of-
we'll name it, Parent.
Parents Pete Moss.
Parents.
It would eventually be, I'm
Yes.
sure.
Parents pit.
Just curious.
Parents
No,
pit.
well, so I believe, Frank, that MSK there'll be like the do nothing option.
Yeah.
The tear it out option, the option to do the other. They'll have alternatives. And that definitely, it's never been talked about.
The Frank option.
Yeah, exactly.
No,
We're
that's what
definitely-
I
we're
prefaced my
definitely
comment.
And
Naming it after you.
in defense of Frank,
This
that
is
was the
too
first
good of an
thing offered by
opportunity.
the Agency of Natural Resources, was
Exactly.
to take it out.
Yeah, it did
When-
come up.
When we had the river engineer there, he said, take it out for free. And then,
Right.
fun would go away, so.
Yeah, exactly.
We should have more info on that. I'm not, the timing of that study should be somewhere, I think in another 2 to 3 months. And it'll show us kind of what the liability level is, associated with it. But hopefully if there's a funding source out there that might match up with that, the timing might be good.
If we talked about this, do you want to have executive session?
I think that was the plan. was-
Okay. So we can go through the finance report, the manager's report, and then we'll do executive session. if we have to.
Finance, you can see delinquent taxes here, we compare higher, but not substantially higher. After a lot of number crunching, but not yet having the auditor, full stuff yet, we're kind of predicting that we'll, FY 24, which just ended, could be around 1 to 2%. But we'll see what happens when, Bonnie from Budget's office actually starts to pull stuff together. There's a lot of one-time expense that we can get reimbursed with the bond for, architects, stuff like that. There's also expense in last year's budget that it's off written by grants this year and actually previous years. So my guesstimate is it's, FY 24 will be 1 to 2%. But we'll see. And then as far as the new fiscal year, which is what you have in the report, it's barely started. So,
And let's say our budget for next year was based on break even.
Is this right? These two numbers? I hadn't noticed it before. I just
they
noticed it.
shouldn't be.
One of those must be
Reappraisal on equipment.
replaceable equipment.
Yeah,
Not a big deal. It was just transposed.
Yeah, those get updated once a year, so. Probably.
Okay. Any other questions on finance?
Motion to accept
Second,
finance report as presented.
I'll second.
all in favor, say aye.
I,
Okay, paving for Morse Hill should happen about July, November, then it's published. We don't have a confirmation date. Gonna pave the whole road this summer. The village of Dorset is hopefully gonna have paving happen. Yeah. Hopefully by, before the snow flies. There's a lot of moving parts to the end of the water project and we want to wait until that's done. Meadow chain.
There've been a lot of leaks lately.
Yep.
Just coincidentally, or is it doing something?
No, I mean, they're doing work on individual service lines and sometimes the lines can't be shut off locally.
Oh, I see.
So they then have to backtrack to other parts of the
Right,
system and
right.
shut
Okay.
those things down, so then you're shutting down, like, it's not great. It's like going to the dentist every day.
Well, it's just interesting because we've gotten through so much of it. It seems
Yeah,
like
no,
things
they're
have
doing it,
calmed down and then all of a sudden
vendor-
it's like leak, leak.
Yeah, the vendors really, they deserve a lot of credit. It's not an easy project. Each day, so there's something different, on a different property, doing something different. Everything located in different spots, it's different, materials, so. The reality though is that it's gonna continue on for quite a bit. They're going to, the vendor is gonna, the first contract is gonna finish here probably by September, and then there's additional work, so we had to get easements from people to do their service line. Not everybody gave us an easement right away.
Right.
Now the people that didn't say, have come forward and said, oh, you're actually doing this, I'd like an easement, so. So now those are gonna have to be kind of packaged up in another contract and they'll be,
We had to get a new contractor?
yeah. It could be the same contractor, but it'll have to go through a new public bid. And it's likely that that's gonna stretch some of the work into the next year.
I thought that old contractor wanted out.
He wants out of the, current contract,
I see,
Which
wants to
is
renegotiate.
not as favorable, I think, as they think it could be. But it is favorable. They're gonna be well under budget. And there's some nuance about actually there may be some. that might be able to help us, might not be. But we got a loan, so we had a work description, we had a loan for $5 million. Now, we're gonna have a lot of capacity in the loan, $5 million. The loan has forgiveness embedded into it. Now, because of the work description that we put forward 3 years ago, we're not able to add the work to it. They're potentially out on $300,000 to $400,000 of forgiveness because they're sticking to they're saying it wasn't description. Which really stinks.
Which area, who's that? Say,
The Water Investment Division, which is one of the many divisions. of the City of Nashville.
No
Which
flexibility.
every time it makes a rule, nobody knows, and it makes things harder.
Nothing like progress.
The environmentalist would say that, so it's great. What else we got? Talked about 35% design, talked about the STR stuff. And I will, as things progress, I'll take pictures of the work after and we'll, kind of see where it goes. I will say one thing, that all the vendors do talk about, the rec traffic, the mountain bike traffic. That's pretty, when they closed it, they were, we had to notice and put posters up and close the road for blasting and stuff. They wanted to do that because one, obviously concerned driving blasting.
Right.
There was a lot of cars going. The volume of traffic is not, which is good.
Rob, have you thought of putting like a trail counter? Is there any way
So we have,
capture?
this spring, we were supposed to borrow one from,
They're not that much.
no.
We got them at Merck and changed our life.
But
Yeah.
where would it
You
go?
can
Because
see-
you've got two different entrances, so before you.
We'd have to put it down, like on the main entrance
Just
down
where
by
you
30,
drive
so
And you can
drive
see
it.
what time
We
of
would
day people are
yeah,
coming, like
we
what
wouldn't
the
necessarily
volume
be
is,
able
it's really helpful.
Be able to differentiate what they're doing, but
Yeah.
that some people
Yeah.
can't. Yeah, no, we actually, we were supposed to borrow a specific trail counter that goes on.
Right.
Like on the actual single track trail,
Right.
but I don't think that came to fruition.
Should we sign these first or go into the benefit session?
I know, but
There's a lot. What is?
there's a couple of weeks.
This one.
This is what I did some stuff before, we did a bunch of stuff now. So,
fuel.
It's your first mortgage, owned by federal government, owned by HUD.
And so did you? I think I tried to put-
No, so we had, it was delinquent in taxes, so we actually tried to start a tax sale proceeding, and then the federal state attorney said, yeah, that's property. Sell it now. They pay the taxes on how much it's paying them, so. Wouldn't, they won't sell it.
So this-
Where's this?
You know,
Market
my
money.
solar house, it's right on Route 30 and,
Yeah.
and
So
grass is like growing up to here and it's just falling apart.
neighbors.
And it's a big property, the two different.
Oh, yeah,
buildings
it's a
on
little
it.
bit of, yeah, a little bit of TLC now.
And if they sold it, they'd make money.
Yeah, well, yeah.
But where is this on Route 30?
Stonewall Lane,
Do you know, as you're going,
JKM.
as you're going north, it has Bay Burns and then it's a little, it's like almost a gambrel. And it's kind of a sage green and the
Yeah.
grass is up this high and then there's another building back there. Mark Putnam used to live there. And apparently it was a reverse mortgage, so Rob was saying that we can't do anything about it, it's owned by the federal government, they won't sell it. So. It just sits there unused.
Probably could get their money.
But falling apart.
6
you know,
years ago, they probably couldn't.
Nobody's living in it.
Now they can. So, who knows, but. No, yeah, it's, I think I even had Kevin send that contact. Yeah.
John Hancock's.
Okay, so can we have a motion to,
We'll make a motion to go to executive session, discuss possible contracts.
yes, perfect, I heard a
Yeah.
second,
Somebody we need to throw out. Zoom.
I will second.
Yes. Ariel, we're gonna stop recording and the board is going into executive